I figured I'd just give everyone a quick summary of the tools that we're talking about today during the Zwift ride. Some people were asking about some of the fitness analysis tools and stuff, so I thought I'd give a quick introduction. So I wanted to show everyone the Strava Pro Fitness and Freshness graph and compare that to what's provided by this Elevate plugin for Chrome, and also this Intervals.icu system. Just really quickly, some key terms in case people aren't familiar. Functional threshold power. This is super, super important. This all assumes that people want to train to get faster, not just for a race, to have fun, whatever. Okay, so everyone uses, no matter what the apps are, everyone uses these same terms, and they're pretty universal. So FTP, probably a lot of people are familiar with. So how many watts you could theoretically hold at a steady state for 1 hour, which determines how fast you can go on flat ground. Another really important metric is FTP per kilogram, or how many watts per kilogram of body weight, and that's how fast you can climb a hill. Fitness or chronic training load, how much training you've been doing recently. It's like a exponentially weighted 42-day average of the work that you've been putting in training on the bike. Fatigue, also by how much training you've been doing, but yeah, fatigue dissipates faster than fitness, and I'll get into that later. And form is like the spread between fitness and fatigue. And yeah, if you want to perform well in a race, you need good FTP per kilogram if there are any hills at all. Good form in that you've done a lot of training, but you've taken a break before the race so that you're well rested. And of course, you have to have good equipment and good race knowledge, bike handling, strategy, etc., how to be efficient, etc. Okay, enough of that. The Strava Fitness and Freshness features, you need a pro account to have access to this information. It's not, it doesn't really give you a lot of useful, actionable information here. And I didn't really understand the value of this chart for a very long time, up until really just recently. You can see like all of the training that I was doing like a year ago, and then this is the Solstice 24-hour-ish race earlier this year, and then I started slacking off, so my fitness went way down because I was doing hardly any riding into January 2022, and now I've really ramped up my fitness because I want to not suck at the training camp in South Carolina, or at P2A, which is the race that I'm training for right now. There's these couple other things in here, yeah, like I said, fitness is like, how much training you've been doing recently, and it drops off slowly over time if you don't do any activity. And if you do lots of activity, then it builds up again. Fatigue, how much fatigue you've loaded in. So you can see here I was doing like a bunch of training and my fitness went up a little bit. My fatigue skyrocketed, but the fatigue drops off faster than your fitness. So the spread in between these two lines is really kind of what you're looking for if you want to be race ready. So right prior to the Solstice race, I dropped off my training a little bit so that I had, here, let me turn this on, so that my form, so I was well rested kind of leading up to the race. So anyways, it's interesting information, but it's hard to really understand with these little lines, like what the hell is going on and what can I do to actually improve things in the future, right? This Elevate Chrome plugin does basically all the things that the Strava Fitness and Freshness thing does, but it's free. You just pull in all of your data from Strava right into here. It automatically refreshes all the time each time you do a ride. And I find it a lot easier to kind of understand what's going on, but with the lines being different colors. And there's a couple of other nice things with the Elevate plugin, like year progressions. You can see how much training you've been doing, like, here we go, how many kilometers I put in at different points of the year as things have progressed, and a kilometer goal, whatever, play around with it. It's much better than it. First, it's free, and it's much better than the Strava Fitness and Freshness feature. But the one thing that this doesn't do, that the next tool I'm going to show you does do, is it doesn't give you any ability to kind of plan for the future and work on ramping up your fitness and see what the effects of your future planned training are going to have on your fitness. So the last tool, Intervals.icu. At the top, I've got basically the same thing as that graph that we were showing in the Elevate app, but there's a extremely useful summary at the bottom that I really never understood until I read this information. So how do you get stronger? If your goal is to get more fit, to have a higher FTP, to have higher watts per kilo, how does that happen physiologically, right? And they explain, like, in a pretty simple way, you need to keep your fatigue line, this purple line right here, needs to be higher than your fitness line or your chronic training load. If your fatigue is higher than your fitness line, then that means you're getting stronger. I mean, it's a little bit counterintuitive. I didn't really understand that for a really long time, but you need to push yourself. It's like progressive overload. You need to push yourself harder than your current fitness level in order to get stronger. So yeah, in times where I'm not doing much work and my fatigue drops off, well, you can see my fitness drops off as well. Whenever my fatigue line, the purple line, is higher than my current fitness level, oh, lo and behold, my fitness improves and gets higher. And so right around here is like today, the vertical line there. I can see what I've been doing. Oh, a couple other things. Yeah, color-coded areas of, like, what kind of state your body is in. This green area right down here is like the optimal training zone, the optimal amount of load. If you're doing way more training than that, you get into this high risk area, high risk of injury. I'm not too worried about this gigantic dip into high risk injury because I've done the amount, the level of training that that I'm currently doing, trying to prepare for South Carolina and P2A. I've done that same amount of load previously, so I'm not too worried about that. I'm not going to stay in this high risk area for too long. But yeah, you kind of want to keep your fatigue level compared to your fitness level with about this much spread between the two lines, and kind of like stay within this optimal area to get as strong as possible, as fast as possible, without injury. And so where does all the future data, like this right here, this is today, where does all this information come from? Oh, and by the way, this is South Carolina right here, this orange thing. This little red dot is P2A coming up. So I'm trying to raise my fitness as much as I can to kind of get back to the same fitness that I had last summer leading up to solstice in advance of P2A. So I'm not embarrassing myself. So the future information, this is where Intervals.icu is really useful. There's a calendar built into this, so I can see my current week that we just wrapped up today, how much training I've been doing, the load that I've been doing with each individual workout, which is like how much of an effect, how much TSS or training stress score, that's another term I should have covered earlier. I've been putting in with each of these rides and seeing how much it adds up to in the week. Okay, so 11:55 this week. I have a target for the next couple of weeks of like 1200. So very briefly, TSS is if you were going at your maximum effort, like at 100% of your FTP for 1 hour, you'd get 100 TSS points, basically. So if you want to have training stress, you need to put in the work. And yeah, the more time that you can put into it, you can put in an extremely large amount of time at a lower pressure, lower training stress to get the same amount of sort of approximately benefit. Or for a shorter amount of time, you can push a lot harder doing heavier duty intervals and get a lot more training stress with a limited amount of time. Anyways, so I've got a certain amount of training stress load in the coming weeks. I've got a blood donation coming up, so I'm going to dial it back in around that kind of time. So I know it's hard to work hard when you don't have much blood in your body. And leading up towards the training camp, and then P to A in my calendar right here. So with each one of these weeks, I can put in my planned load, training load for that individual week, and I can see on the future chart what the likely effect of that load is going to be. So these little purple bars down here, you can see that's the amount of training load that I'm planning for that week, and I can see the effect of my fitness, gradually increasing, pulling myself back into the optimal zone, reducing the risk of injury. I figure at South Carolina, it'll be like a 1,500 TSS week. I plan to do a lot of hard riding there. I'm really looking forward to it. And then, a little bit of recovery after that, and a little bit more training leading up to P to A. And then my stress is I'm gonna have an easy week leading up to P to A, and then the race itself. Yeah, so Elevate doesn't give you this future planning ability with a training calendar. The Strava Fitness and Freshness tools are like laughably inadequate from a future planning perspective. This Intervals.icu tool does cost money. I think it's $12 US for 3 months or something like that. I used it for like 15, 20 minutes, and I immediately saw the value in it. So I'm like, screw it. I think you can get 3 months of data pulled in for free, but if you want all of your historical data, you need to pay like $12, and they'll pull everything in from Strava. My historical weight is shown in this chart down here. That was pulled in from Garmin. I've got a Garmin Wi-Fi scale that I can, it makes it easy to keep track of my weight. You can see how much I suck now compared to less than a year ago, when my FTP and fitness was a lot higher and my watts per kilo were a hell of a lot higher. But hey, you can't be 100% all the time. One of the other really nifty tools with Intervals.icu is power comparison. So what at different amounts of time, well, you're probably familiar with these like power graphs, like how are you doing? What's my peak 10-minute power? In this season, 303 watts. But last year I was able to hold 347 watts for this for 10 minutes, right? But is that good? Is that bad? Who the hell knows? Well, within Intervals.icu, you can compare your peak power across different time frames against other people from all the data that they've got, right? So comparing my data to other 40 to 49-year-old males, I can see, all right, this season I haven't done any 4-hour rides yet, but at my best 2-hour power was 254. Oh, okay. 92.4 percentile of comparable males. Where's that chart down here? 2 hours. So, but yeah, last season my 2-hour power was 287. 98.6. My 4-hour power was 272 on this one particular ride. I'm okay with that number. But yeah, this season I've really dropped off. I can see it like last season, 2021, all of my numbers were decently high, compared to people in the same age category. And the green bar right here is the current season, and I obviously have a long way to go to get back to this condition that I was in last year. Yeah, and one last thing with intervals, this chart right here, like there's a ton of tools in here. This chart I also found pretty interesting, power versus heart rate, right? So if I'm pushing at my like threshold power, how many watts can I put out? Last year in 2021, at my threshold power, it looks like I could do about 350 watts at threshold heart rate. Several years ago in 2016, when I had done a hell of a lot less training, at my 100%, 215 watts at my threshold heart rate back in 2016. So that's a pretty good indication of, improving fitness. The more power, the more watts you can do at the same heart rate, that shows efficiency. Yeah. So anyways, pretty damn useful tool. I'm really, really, really happy with this. It was a total no-brainer to pay for the $12 to bring in all of my data, and it's gonna really, really be helpful. Planning out, leading up to South Carolina and being in best form that I can get away with in this short period of time, leading up to P to A. That's it. I hope that was useful.